This is the Zelos Skyraider 40 Skeleton TI. It's a new release from the Zelos Watches brand, and after having spent a little time with it, this is, I have to say, overall, a really impressive watch. Now, whether or not you agree with me will probably boil down to how you feel about titanium watches, and while I have done several reviews on TI timepieces in the past, I personally haven't owned one, so I haven't had the opportunity to wear one day in and day out until now. And what I have found is that I actually really like it a lot. Titanium has a lot of things going for it when compared to other metals. For one, it's a heck of a lot lighter, so it can be a lot more comfortable on the wrist. It's also a high-strength material, and it's more resistant to damage, which is nice. And along with that durability comes a metal that is of a higher level of corrosion resistance, and it's more anti-magnetic than something like stainless steel. It is also hyperallergenic material, causing less skin irritation than other metals do if that's something that might help you with sensitive skin. So that might be a plus as well. Now on the downside, yes, it is more expensive for manufacturing than that of something like the ubiquitous stainless steel. And depending on the grade of titanium, it often has a darker, duller appearance than steel and precious metals as well. But that might not be a negative at all depending on your personal tastes or your perspective. Now for me, I do like a bright silvered look of a stainless steel watch with a mix of brushed and high polished surfaces. There's no doubt most of us do. But I have to say that I also like a blacked out ceramic watch, and I like PVD coated models. So I think there's a lot of room in a collection for all kinds of watches with all sorts of finishes. And I have to say that a titanium watch with a finish that stands somewhere in between a really bright, shiny steel watch and a totally blacked out model is actually a really nice middle ground for all sorts of occasions. Now, before I get any further into this discussion, let me give a quick thanks to Zelos for sending over this watch for the video. This was provided to me at no cost, but as always, I disclose all of my brand-sponsored videos so that you can rest assured that despite my partnership with any brand that I work with, my presentations are always 100% unbiased, and I always provide complete transparency. That means that, of course, all thoughts and opinions shared in my videos are my own thoughts and opinions, and no one gets editorial influence or control over my content. Now with that said, let's dive into the features and the specifications on this watch. So, this watch has, as the Skyraider 40 name suggests, a 40mm case diameter. The lug-to-lug comes in at 46.5mm on my calipers, and the width between the lugs is 20mm. I'm finding an overall thickness of right at about 10mm, but the Zelos website says that, not including the box crystal, the case thickness is actually only 8.2mm. The case and the bracelet is constructed from titanium, as previously mentioned, and the watch face and the display case back feature sapphire crystals. Now, the case and the bracelet do predominantly feature a satin brush finish, but there are a few hints of high polish along the bracelet edges and on the case between the lugs. Now, speaking of the bracelet, the links are joined with screws, and the screw heads require a 1.4mm driver. Now, I mention that because the watch doesn't come with a screwdriver, so if you get one of these, keep that in mind. You will need to have one, and possibly a pin pusher as well to help you push the screws out once they've been unthreaded. The bracelet end links feature a quick release spring bar system, so strap changes will be a breeze, and you can quickly remove the bracelet for cleaning and maintenance as well, which is a nice convenience, to say the least. The clasp features a dual button release system, and there's an engraved Zelos branded logo, but more importantly, it has great toolless micro adjustment, and on the inside of the clasp, you get plenty of adjustability without the hassle of needing a spring bar tool. So yeah, between the adjustable clasp and the ample amount of additional links, and I had to remove a whole bunch of those links to get this sized down to my 6.5-inch wrist, yeah, this will easily fit just about any and all wrist sizes. Now, the dial on this one might be a little bit of a divisive design choice. Yes, it's skeletonized, and if I'm being honest, I don't love skeleton dials. I find them a little bit hard to see, and they can make reading the watch face and telling time a little bit difficult. Now, fortunately on this watch, legibility isn't as bad as I've seen on other skeletonized dials, thanks to some fairly high contrast orange markers on the dial, and that same color fill on the hands. That paired with the flat black dial, or what's left of the dial's skeleton, does make for some pretty decent contrast, but it still is not my favorite presentation style. Now, on the flip side of the watch face, we're presented with a display caseback and a view of the hand-wound Swiss Marvin 700 watch movement, which is also in a skeletonized presentation. And while I don't love the look of a skeletonized dial, I gotta say that this movement and its skeletonized construction looks awesome. You can see so many little details that would otherwise be hidden by the movement's solid plates and balance bridges. And yeah, I do really love that about this one. Now, regarding the Marvin 700's specs, I can't really tell you a whole lot about that. I couldn't find a ton of information about it. I know it was developed in the early 1950s, and I believe that it's a low-frequency hand-wound movement running at a frequency of about 18,000 vibrations per hour, and it features a power reserve of 46 hours. But this was all the info that I could find on a second-hand website. So if the specs on a movement are super important to you, I suggest doing a deeper dive into that than I was able to do. One final point on the movement is that the watch, or more specifically the movement, doesn't hack. So when you pull the crown out to set the time, the seconds hand on that sub-dial on the watch face just keeps on running. Now, I personally don't think that hacking in general is a make or break feature, but I just thought that you should know because that information isn't mentioned online. Also, here's a quick look at the watch face and the C3 and BGW9 glow-in-the-dark lume. It's a nice lume presentation, and it's pretty readable in low light and in darkness. Now, a couple of other quick points about this watch quickly. It comes to you in a very nice leather watch roll with space for the Zelos and a couple of additional watches. So if you travel, you can use this to carry at least 3 watches with you on your trip. And I've never seen this before either, but the watch comes with a metal warranty and registration card. That's kind of a cool feature, and yeah, it's totally different. Finally, I believe that these are limited to just 75 pieces, but look, don't quote me on that. The website doesn't specify or mention that, but on the back of the watch, on my example, it's notated as being one of 75, or at least that's what I think that indication means. So yeah, let's do a quick little recap with some pros and cons on this one. Pros for me are, obviously, the lightweight titanium construction is awesome, and the excellent quality overall, especially on the bracelet and the clasp. The whole build on this one is top-notch, but those features especially really stand out. The movement also looks fantastic in the display caseback window, and I'm impressed with the fit and finish of the watch and on the movement as well. Now the negatives, and I'm going to say that most of these are subjective and it comes down to personal taste, but I'll bring them up anyway. I don't love skeletonized dials in general. That's just me, so yeah, I've got a little bit of a problem with that. A non-hacking movement might be an issue for some people, but I have to say that I don't really mind that myself too much. Still, some might call that a negative. And while I like the titanium and I find that to be a positive, titanium does have a darker looking finish, and while I do like that as well, I know lots of people have talked about it and they don't prefer the look of titanium. So that might be a negative for you. I don't know, your mileage may vary. So yeah, there you have it. That's the Zelos Skyraider 4D Skeleton Ti. I hope you guys enjoyed checking this one out with me. Now let me know down in the comments below, what did you think about this one? And let me know, how do you feel about titanium watches in general? This being my first real opportunity to spend a lot of time with one and to have one and to wear it daily, I have to say that I have kind of grown to become more of a fan of it than I had in the past. And I could see myself having at least one titanium watch in my collection. Now, with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say thanks for tuning in and watching. As always, I really appreciate it. Also, thanks to Zelos for sending this one over for the video. I appreciate that as well. Now I'm going to close this one out for today and say until the next one, bye now.